So I'll just sing Jai Radha Madhava quickly. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Okay, we'll finish there. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so let's start on text 27 of chapter 11. Chapter 11 is entitled Lord Krishna's Entrance into Dwarka. Sita tapatra vyajana rupaskrita prashunavashe abhivashita pati prishangavasa vanamalaya bhavo gano yatako dupa chapavajutai. Word for word. Sita atapatra, white umbrella. Vyajanaya, with a camera fan. Upaskritaha, being served by. Prasuna, flowers. Vashai, by the showers. Abhivajitaha, thus being covered. Pati, on the road. Pisangavasaha, by the yellow garments. Vanamalaya, by the flower garlands. Babo, thus it became. Ganaha, cloud. Yata, as if. Arka, the sun. Udupa, the moon. Chapa, the rainbow. Vaidyutai, by the lightning. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. As the Lord passed along the public road at Dwarka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud was surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows. Purport. The sun, moon, rainbow, and lightning do not appear in the sky simultaneously. When there is sun, the moonlight becomes insignificant. And if there are clouds and a rainbow, there is no manifestation of lightning. The Lord's bodily hue is just like a new monsoon cloud. He is compared herein to the cloud. The white umbrella over his head is compared to the sun. The movement of the bunch hair fan of flukes is compared to the moon. The showers of flowers are compared to the stars. His yellow garments are compared to the rainbow. So all these activities of the firmament, being impossible simultaneous factors, cannot be adjusted by comparison. The adjustment is possible only when we think of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. The Lord is all-powerful, and in his presence, anything impossible can be made possible by his inconceivable energy. But the situation created at the time of his passing on the roads of Dwarka was beautiful and could not be compared to anything besides the description of natural phenomena. Text 28. Pravistastu griham pitro parishvakta swamatribihi vavande shirasa sapta devaki pramukha muda. Word for word. Pravishtaha, after entering. To, but. Griham, houses. Pitro, of the father. Parishvaktaha, embraced. Sva matribihi, by his own mothers. Vavande, offered obeisances. Shirasa, his head. Sapta, 7. Devaki, Pramukha, headed by. Muta, gladly. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother. Purport. It appears that Vasudeva, the father of Lord Krishna, had completely separate residential quarters where he lived with his 18 wives, out of whom Srimati Devaki is the real mother of Lord Krishna. But in spite of this, all other stepmothers were equally affectionate to him, as will be evident from the following verse. Lord Krishna also did not distinguish his real mother from his stepmothers, and he equally offered his obeisances unto all the wives of Vasudeva present on the occasion. According to scriptures also, there are 7 mothers. 1, the real mother. 2, the wife of the spiritual master. 3, the wife of a brahmana. 4, the wife of the king. 5, the cow. 6, the nurse. And 7, the earth. All of them are mothers. Even by this injunction of the Shastra, the stepmother, who is the wife of the father, is also as good as the mother, because the father is also one of the spiritual masters. Lord Krishna, the Lord of the universe, plays the part of an ideal son, just to teach others how to treat their stepmothers. Text 29. Taputram mankam aropya sneha snuta payodaraha harsha vivalitatmana sishichu netraja jalai. Word for word. Taha, all of them. Putram, the son. Ankam, the lap. Aropya, having placed on. Sneha snuta, moistened by affection. Payodaraha, breasts filled up. Harsha, delight. Vivalita atmanaha, overwhelmed by. Sishuchu, wet. Netrajai, from the eyes. Jalai, water. Translation. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. Purport. When Lord Krishna was at Vrindavan, even the cows would become moistened by affection towards him, and he would draw milk from the nipples of every affectionate living being. So what to speak of the stepmothers, who were already as good as his own mother. Okay, we'll go back to the first one. First of all, we'll do Mangala Charanam. Om Agyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhagavati Vedana Swami Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Gauralani Pachani Nivishesha Shunivadi Pashara Deshatani Hare Krishna. So I beg for the blessings and mercy of not only those great souls we've mentioned in the Mangala Charanam, but also for all of those present here, and of course all devotees in the world. Without the blessings of the devotees, it's impossible to say anything bona fide or Krishna conscious. So please give me your blessings. So we'll start on verse 27. Sita tapatra vyajana upashkritaha prasuna vashe abhivarsita pati pisanga vasa vanamalaya babo gano yata ko dupa chapa vaidyutai. As the Lord passed along the public road at Dwarka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud was surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows. So here, Sutta Goswami is describing the Lord's return to Dwarka. The Dwarka Vasis had been in separation for so long, whilst Lord Krishna was in Hastinapur. And I believe the scene was very much like in Vrindavan, where they were just existing as though like ghosts, practically, hardly just going through the motions of life, eating, sleeping, cleaning, doing whatever service they had to do, but just as a like an automatic process. There wasn't the life without Krishna. The life of the devotee is very plain, very not very lively, basically. So here, Krishna had blown his white conch shell, and with the sound of that conch shell, all the residents of Dwarka came back to life, and so now we're hearing how the Lord is actually blessing them by coming back. Just revise the last verse at least, where it describes the Lord, and this is a continuation. The Lord's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. His arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods, and his lotus feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except his lordship. So, and then, so here, the Lord hasn't actually entered back into his palaces. He's just passing along the public road. so that everybody actually can see him. And then it's describing how someone was holding a white umbrella over his head. So he's being served at every moment. And also other devotees, they were moving white feathered fans, maybe chamaras, in semicircles. And also others were throwing flowers before the Lord so that he would walk on beautiful soft petals. And then he's describing how simultaneously he appeared like simultaneously there was the sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining how actually this is impossible. You can't have, at least in the material world, you can't have all these things together at the same time, the sun and the moon. If the sun is out, then the moon can't be seen. Obviously, it's still there, but it's not visible. And also, you can't have a rainbow and lightning at the same time. Apparently, so Prabhupada says in the purport that this can't be adjusted by comparison. In other words, there's nothing in the material world that can be compared to this. And then he says the adjustment is possible only when we think of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that inconceivability is to understand that actually the Lord is inconceivable. What does inconceivable mean? It means that it's not understandable. And Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 9, verse 4, in his purport, the verse goes, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani savabhutani nachaham tesh avastitaha. So then he explains what this inconceivability is. The translation is, by me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And then Prabhupada quotes an important verse in the purport. Ata Shri Krishna namadi nabhavet grayam indriyai sevan mukhe hijivado svayameva sparatyada. And this is a Bhakti Shastri verse, I believe. At least it was when I did Bhakti Shastri back in the day. That Lord Sri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc., cannot be understood by material senses. You can only understand Krishna if you're engaged in pure devotional service under proper guidance. So that's what this verse is saying, Ata Shri Krishna Namad. So we can't expect to understand Krishna through mundane logic or reasoning. Therefore, there may be academics who have incredible knowledge of the Vedas, including the Puranas, even the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. But unless they are engaged in Krishna's service, then actually it's all inconceivable, or not genuinely. It's not realization. Just like Krishna says himself in the 7th chapter, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya. How does it go? Yoga Maya Samavritaha. So basically, he says, I'm covered by my Yoga Maya. So in order to understand Krishna, we have to understand that he's not, you can't confine him by logic, by reasoning. He's beyond that. He has to be, because our intelligence, our brain is not capable of encompassing something that is it's just like in this verse from the 9th chapter, that is all pervading in everything and yet not in everything, like that. So this is the inconceivability of the Lord. So so this is the first point that Prabhupada brings up, that the Lord must be inconceivable because he is beyond the modes of material nature. He's the controller of the modes of material nature. So therefore, he's not controlled by them. And our bodies, our brains, our conditioned nature is just part of that material nature. And the other thing is that he's saying at the end of the purport that he's very beautiful and he cannot be compared to anything besides the description of natural phenomena. So the closest thing we can get actually to the beauty of the Lord is understanding the beauty of nature. Just like, you know, if we go into a beautiful place where there's mountains and lakes and the sun is rising, then we actually get some idea of the beauty of the Lord, because actually it's just a reflection of him. Everything beautiful just is actually created by the Lord. Just like actually human beings try to reproduce beauty in art, for instance, or in music. But for instance, and the example is given, I think, by Srila Prabhupada somewhere, that like an artist may paint a flower, but does it compare to the beauty of the original flower? And the Supreme Lord, he produces so many millions of those flowers, and they're all unique as well. So the artist's painting of a vase of flowers, for instance, is maybe appreciated, but it's nothing compared to the beauty of the original. And so in the same way, the reflection, which is this material world, and the beauty of that is nothing, is insignificant compared to the beauty of the Lord. So then we'll go on to verse 28. Pravistas tu griham pitro parisvakta svamatribihi bhavande shirasa sapta devaki pramukha muda. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother. So, so now Krishna enters into his father's palace, Vasudev's house, his residential quarters, where he lived with 18 wives. And then Prabhupada says how Devaki is the real mother of Lord Krishna. This is another point which is interesting, because there are accounts, I believe, I can't quote from where exactly, but that actually Yashoda Mai was the real mother of Krishna. But of course, in the sense that the Lord first appeared in the prison of Kamsa, then Devaki can be considered his real mother. And then Prabhupada explains about stepmothers, how actually they were equally affectionate to the Lord. And the Lord also didn't discriminate between his original mother, his real mother, and his stepmothers, all those others. But he offered his obeisances to all of them equally. And then Prabhupada lists the 7 mothers, and they are the real mother, in other words, the birth mother, the physical mother, the wife of the spiritual master, the wife of a brahmana, the wife of the king, the cow, the nurse, and the earth. So it's a very important concept of, or not just, but fact or reality about mother, how the mother appears in so many different forms. And more or less, this is covering practically all forms of mother. So, and how important it is that we should appreciate, respect, and serve those mothers. So when the term Mataji is used, actually it's a term of great respect. It's not just a throwaway term, or just a hey you guy or something like that. Is actually mother is a very eminent position, as indicated by this purport, and we should feel great reverence actually for not only our real mother but for all other mothers. And of course we should consider all women as mothers, and to be treated with reverence actually as well. So this is the ideal behavior of a son, which Lord Krishna is exemplifying. He's teaching others, he's teaching us actually how to treat, well, he says, Prabhupada says in the purport, to treat their stepmothers. So this means we can consider every lady as a stepmother and treat them with great consideration and respect. So we'll go on to text 29. This is very closely connected with text 28. Ta putram ankamaropya sneha snuta payodaraha hasha viva lil atmanaha shishuchu netra jalai. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. And the purport is very short, actually. When Lord Krishna was at Vrindavan, even the cows would become moistened by affection towards him, and he would draw milk from the nipples of every affectionate living being. So what to speak of the stepmothers, who were already as good as his own mother? So this verse and the previous verse, actually this verse, verse 29, is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the Nectar of Devotion. There's a chapter which is not generally covered in the, or never covered in the Bhakti Shastri, because in the Bhakti Shastri we only go up to chapter 19. But in chapter 43 of the Nectar of Devotion, we have a description by Srila Prabhupada of parenthood. The title of the chapter is Parenthood. And it explains all about Vatsalya Ras, And how actually Mother Yashoda is the greatest exponent of motherhood and Vatsalya Ras. So so I'm going to share with you something from this chapter. There's lots of nice examples given, and also it's commented upon by Danadhar Swami in his Waves of Devotion, with some of the technical details as well. So so the first thing is, of course, that Vatsalya Ras is one of the 5 main relationships with Krishna. And one of the main things, one of the main characteristics of parental love, which is described here in these 2 verses, 28 and 29, is anugraha, compassion and mercy toward Krishna. So this is also a little inconceivable for the mundane logician, maybe, that one could have a devotee of the Lord can have anugraha, compassion and mercy toward Krishna. Why does Krishna need compassion and mercy? You know, he's perfect, and he doesn't actually need our compassion or mercy. Well, in one sense, maybe he doesn't need that compassion or mercy, but he enjoys it. So in another sense, he does need it because it's actually something that gives pleasure to Krishna, and Krishna is a supreme enjoyer, and it's our duty to try to please Krishna in whatever way he can be pleased, and he is pleased by those who have this feeling of anugraha towards him. So this is the main characteristic of parental affection, this anugraha. Thinking actually that the devotees thinking I am superior to Krishna. Thinking that Krishna is helpless and in need of my care, like that. So Mother Yashoda typifies that mood as well. Yeah, so basically the devotee with this mood feels he's senior to Krishna. And of course, Krishna plays along with that. And actually doesn't just play along with it, it's he feels that as well. Just as we all know very well of how Krishna stole the butter, broke the pot, and ran away in fear from Krishna, being chased by Mother Yashoda with a stick in her hand. And he was actually fearful, like that. So, Krishna gets fully into the role through his Yogamaya potency. So let's have a look at some of the examples given actually given by Rupa Goswami in the original Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and repeated by Srila Prabhupada in the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 43. Well, the first example given is a verse where a devotee says, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily complexion is like a bluish, new-grown lotus flower, whose body is very delicate, and whose lotus eyes are surrounded by scattered hair, as black as bees, was walking on the streets of Vrindavan when Mother Yashoda, the beloved wife of Nanda Maharaj, saw him. And then what happened? Immediately, the milk began to flow from her breast, soaking her body. So this is one of the main symptoms of motherhood, at least, Vatsalya Ras. And then he describes, Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, they describe what are the udipans, what provokes this feeling of parental unugraha towards Krishna. And there's various qualities about him. First of all, it's his blackish bodily hue, which is very attractive and pleasing to see. His all auspicious bodily features, his mildness, his sweet words, his simplicity, his shyness, his humility, his constant readiness to offer respect to the elderly, and his charity. All of these qualities are considered ecstatic provocations for parental love. So, so when the elderly devotees, elderly in the sense that they're senior to Krishna in age, apparently, when they see these qualities, then that natural feeling of parental protection towards Krishna arises in their hearts. And then there's a verse which Shivaram Swami Maharaj says in Sri Damodar Janani, I think it is, yeah, which is his book about the Damodar pastime, in which Mother Yashoda is the heroine. He says that this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, 8th chapter, verse 45, is the Paribhasa Sutra for Krishna's childhood pastimes. And the verse says that Mother Yashoda accepted Lord Krishna as her son, although and then the verse makes a comparison. She accepted him as her son, although he is accepted in the Vedas as the king of heaven, in the Upanishads as the impersonal Brahman, in philosophy as the supreme male, by the yogis as the supersoul, and the devotees as the supreme personality of Godhead. So, but she thought of Krishna just as her ordinary son. If you go to the actual translation of the verse, I think it says that she thought of him just as an ordinary boy, or her ordinary son. So a son, a little boy, a baby, requires his mother's protection. Without it, he can't survive, or she can't survive. So therefore, a mother is naturally, spontaneously inclined to always give protection to her young child. And then she addressed one of her friends like this. She said, Nanda Maharaj, the leader of the cowherd men, worshipped Lord Krishna along with me, Yashoda is saying, and as a result of this worship, Krishna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons. So she's saying, actually, the only reason why Krishna doesn't fall victim to all these demons who come, like Putana and Shakatasura and so many others, is because Nanda Maharaj and herself are always doing pujas, they're doing worship of Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan, and therefore Krishna is protected. And she said also that those twin Arjuna trees, you know, of course, it was a strong wind that did that. It wasn't Krishna pulling what's it called? Forgot. anyway, pulling them down by crawling between them with the churning thing. So it was a strong wind. And also she said that Krishna appeared to have lifted Govardhan Hill along with Balaram. But she said, I think actually, in fact, Nanda Maharaj actually held up that mountain, not Krishna. Otherwise, how could it be possible for a little boy to lift such a great hill? Of course, how would it be possible for Nanda Maharaj even to lift up a great hill? But still, this is how she's thinking. So this is another example of ecstasy in parental love that Mother Yashoda feels. Prabhupada explains that this feeling is generated out of the devotee's conviction that he's superior to Krishna. And without Krishna being protected by him, Krishna couldn't possibly live. He's not going to survive without their protection. There's actually quite a well-known verse which is mentioned here in the 43rd chapter of Nectar Devotion. It says, a Brahmana is speaking, and he says, let others worship the Vedas and the Upanishads, and let others worship the Mahabharata if they are afraid of material existence and want to become liberated from that condition. But as far as I'm concerned, I wish only to worship Maharaj Nanda, because the supreme absolute personality of Godhead Krishna is crawling in his courtyard as his own child. So that's quite a well-known verse. I don't know where it's from. If anybody knows, they can maybe put it on the chat. I'd be interested to see where that's from. So there are a number of personalities who are mentioned as being in this mood. And so the most important one, number one, and they're in order of importance. Number one, Mother Yashoda herself, the Queen of Vraja. Number two, you won't be surprised to hear, is Maharaj Nanda, the King of Vraja. Number three is Rohini, the mother of Balaram. Number four, all the elderly gopis whose sons were taken away by Lord Brahma. So, of course, Krishna, I think this is alluded to in this verse 29 of the 11th chapter that we're, or at least in the purport, Prabhupada is, I think, alluding to that that when Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys, then Krishna obviously replaced them with his own expansions, and then they went back home. Although they were actually Krishna, they were actually identical to the original boys. And then these elderly gopis, they got the opportunity to feed Krishna their own breast milk, so that they could fully experience this parental ras. So who else? Number five, Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. And then those who are mentioned in this verse 29 of the 11th chapter, the other he says here 15 wives of Vasudeva, but elsewhere it's saying 18 wives. But anyway, I don't know the reason for that, whether it's a misprint or whether there's some other reason for it. But anyway, not to worry. 7, Kunti, the mother of Arjuna, she was in parental ras as well. 8, Vasudeva, the real father of Krishna. And 9, Sandipani Muni, Krishna's teacher. So all of these respectable elderly personalities had parental love for Krishna. But the most, or Prabhupada describes them as the supermost of these are Yashoda and Maharaj Nanda, and of whom Yashoda is the topmost. So then Prabhupada goes into a fairly lengthy description of Mother Yashoda. Well, actually, no, the Srimad Bhagavatam does. Shukadev Goswami gives a description of the form and beauty of Mother Yashoda. He says in the 10th canto, 9th chapter, verse 3, "My dear king," talking to Parikshit Maharaj, "the wide hips of Mother Yashoda were surrounded by silk and linen clothes, and her breasts were flowing with milk because of her affection. When she was churning butter and tightly holding the rope, the bangles on her hands and the earrings on her ears were moving, and from the nice decoration in her hair, the flowers were slackening and falling down. Due to her excessive labor, there were drops of perspiration on her face." So this is part of the beginning of the Damodar pastime. So there's also a description of Mother Yashoda's affection for Krishna. First thing, rising early in the morning, the first thing that Mother Yashoda did was to offer her milk to Krishna. And then, what did she do? She began to chant various mantras for his protection. Then she would decorate his forehead very nicely, bind his arms with protective talismans. By all these activities, it is definitely understood that she is the emblem of all maternal affection for Krishna. So, and then there's a description of Nanda Maharaj and his features. And Prabhupada says somewhere in this chapter that actually we should meditate on these features of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. Not that we can become them, apparently that is Mayavad, but we can adopt that similar mood if we feel most attractive to the parental mood. And of course, deity worship lends itself very much to the. Of course, we are told to worship Radha and Krishna in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan with awe and reverence, at least at the beginning of our deity worship practice. But as a devotee matures, then maybe he will actually take on this mood of parental affection towards Krishna. Because of course, he's thinking that, you know, Krishna needs my service. How can he survive without it? And therefore he will cook for Krishna, dress Krishna, bathe Krishna, do all these things. So, of course, the gopis, who are obviously in the conjugal rasa, they're also doing similar things. They're dressing, well, they're dressing Radharani mostly, I believe. So just to move on, we've got a few minutes left. So there's some interesting points that Damodar Swami brings up. He's saying actually there are three childhood ages of Krishna. The first one is Kaumara, but that is actually also divided into three periods: the beginning of Kaumara age, the middle of the Kaumara age, and the end of Kaumara age. So Krishna has different qualities, characteristics, according to the different ages he's at. Like any child, they develop in different ways. But the Adya Kaumara is from birth through to 1 year old. And at that age, his rupa, his form, is described as follows. Krishna's thighs are fatty, and the inner part of his eyes are whitish. There are signs of teeth coming out, and he is very mild and gentle. Then his exploits, his chesta. So at this age, from birth till the age of 1, he was sometimes stepping with his legs again and again, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, sometimes sucking his thumb, and sometimes lying down flat. These are some of the different activities of the child Krishna in his Adya Kaumara. Then he has various ornaments particular to this age. He has actually the nails of tigers set in a golden necklace about his neck. There was protective tilak on his forehead, black mascara around his eyes, and silk thread around his waist. And these items, they provoke this parental affection in the devotees. And then in the Madhya Kaumara, this is from the age of 2 through to 3 years old. 2 and 3 years old. His form has changed slightly in the Madhya Kaumara. His scattered hairs were touching his eyebrows, and his eyes were restless, but he could not express his feelings with proper words. Still, when he was talking, his talk was so nice and sweet to hear. Mother Yashoda looked at his little ears and saw him naked, trying to run very quickly with his little legs, and she was merged into the ocean of nectar. Of course, we all have that experience to some degree of just ordinary children, very, very charming. And then what are his ornaments like in this Madhya Kaumara? So that he had ringing when he was moving, the ringing of bells on his waist, and smiling at her with a pearl between his nostrils, and with butter on his hands. So those are the features, qualities of his middle Kaumara age. And then the Shesha Kumara, the end of this Kumara age, is from 4 years old through 5 years old. His roop, his form, his waist became thinner, his chest became broader, and his head was decorated with his curly hairs, resembling the falling of the wings of a crow. These wonderful features of Krishna's body never failed to astonish Mother Yashoda. And his mandana, his ornaments. So at the end of his Kaumara age, Krishna carried a small stick in his hand. His clothing was a little longer, and he had a knot around his waist, resembling the hood of a snake. And his activities. So at that point, when he was between 4 and 5 years old, he used to take care of the calves near the house, so he wouldn't go into the forest. And sometimes he played with cowherd boys of about the same age. He had a slender flute and a buffalo horn bugle, and sometimes he played on a flute made from the leaves of trees. And as Krishna grew up a little, his cowherding would wander farther away from home. Sometimes he would return a little late, impelling great anxiety to overwhelm his parents. So these are some descriptions of Krishna's form, his ornaments, his activities, which provoke the great love of those in a parental affection. when he gets older, like in Poganda or Kaishore, which is from the age of like 6 to 10 and then 11 to 15. The devotees in parental affection, they still actually feel the similar kind of feelings as they did before, because that is their mood. So just like a mother, even when her children are grown up, she still thinks of them as her little children, like that, because she just sees that's what she's attached to. They're when they were small. So she feel even like if a son is a prime minister or a president, but when he goes home and meets his mother, she's just his little boy again, like that. So in that way, the devotees, they still think of Krishna as just a little boy in need of protection. So there's a lot more. I can recommend you can read this chapter 43 of the Nectar of Devotion. It's not too long, but there's quite a lot of detail in here. But this verse 29, I'll just finish with this, is mentioned in the penultimate page of the chapter. It says, Prabhupada says, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, verse 29, it is stated, and this is a translation, it's slightly different to his translation in the Bhagavatam. When Krishna entered Dwarka after finishing the battle of Kurukshetra, he first of all saw his mother and all his different stepmothers and offered his respectful obeisances unto their feet. The mothers immediately took Krishna upon their laps, and because of their parental affection, there was milk flowing out of their breasts. So their breast milk, mixed with the water of tears, became the first offering to Krishna. This is one of the examples of being satisfied after a great separation. So that's the main point that I wanted to discuss or share with you about this parental affection that is described in these verses 28 and 29. And it's connected to the previous verse because it's inconceivable, of course, that the Supreme Lord, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-pervading, actually becomes a small boy who requires the protection of his parents, or at least they feel that he requires their protection. And he also gets into that mood. He also feels their protection and cherishes that. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions or comments anybody would like to share with us. Hare Krishna. Let's see who is there. Oh. Singha Vallabha, Hare Krishna. You've always got something Krishna conscious to say, Singha Vallabha. Anything, any comments or points you'd like to raise? Please unmute yourself if you can. And
I was trying to unmute myself, the buttons aren't working.
You're unmuted now, though. It's fine.
Yeah, a wee second. I'm having some transcendental difficulty with my computer.
Well, we can hear you fine.
Yeah. No, I just thought, thank you. It's a great class, and I like these parts about Krishna and the relationship with Vatsalya Ras. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
But I don't have any questions about your class. I was listening because I thought it was very nice.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyway, thank you for logging on. Look forward to seeing you, hopefully at Avanti Field sometime.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here next week.
Oh, great. Good.
Unfortunately for everybody, I've got to get class.
No, it's fortunate. It's Saturday. It's not a yatra is on Saturday. So we don't have a program on the Sunday, but it's at Krishna Avanti School on Saturday. Just
Yeah,
so,
I'll be working, unfortunately. I work, so it just makes it very awkward.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Anyway, thank you very much for logging on today. Anybody else? Seva Priya Mataji, I'm sure you must have some realization of the parental ras with your caring for protecting Radha Madhava. If you have, then please share with us some realization. That would be very nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. I just commented in the chat because we are serving here and we're listening at the same time. And I just thanked you very much for this sweet nectar while we serve Radha Madhava.
Oh, right. Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you. Yeah, I see. I can now see your.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll get back to it. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
No problem. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anybody else like to make a comment or have any questions? Karuna Chaitanya Prabhu, anything you'd like to say?
No, you explained so wonderfully about the.
No, I didn't. Srila Prabhupada did.
Yeah, you relayed the message from Srila Prabhupada so wonderfully. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me, for my purification, actually, to try to speak something. I don't have much realization, so please, the prayers and blessings of you all definitely required. Okay, then. So it's 9:15. I think that's probably the time to finish, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll finish there. Please accept my humble obeisances. Vancha kalpa tarubhya Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Praise God, Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
Yeah.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
everyone for participating. And next week, His Grace National Prabhu is going to get class.
Hari Bo.
That's what you think.
Yeah, good.
So we'll meet again next week, same time, same place.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Hari Bo.
Thank you.